And as well as this video tutorial, we've also got the dimensions, the layouts for the sheets, and also some written instructions that you can download in a document below. And before you get started on the project, it's important to make sure you've got the correct tools and type of drywall. So the tools you're going to need are a bottle of PVA glue, a knife with a Stanley blade, and a metre long ruler. Although if you don't have one of those, you can also use a tape measure with a straight edge. And then for the drywall, I'm using a board that's 12.5mm thick. Has a square and not a tapered edge. It's paper wrapped on both of the two long edges, and in total measures 1.2 by 2.4 metres. However, you can also make out offcuts or break the sheet down, for example, to fit into a car. And so that's everything you're going to need, but this is how you make it. And so the first thing we need to do is break the sheet down. Step number 1 is going to be marking and scoring the top layer of paper. And so I'm going to measure off the factory edge, marking at least 2 separate points before connecting them by scoring the paper. And then once everything is scored, we can move on to step number 2, where we snap the board and cut through the back layer of paper. And I've actually already done this in the car park. But if you've got big sheets, I find the easiest way to do it is to lift them up on hand. And use one hand to hold the piece you want to keep, and then use the other to apply force to the break line. And then you can just cut through this back layer of paper. And if you're struggling breaking the long thin strips along the sides, a little trick is to mark both sides of the paper. And then with the sheet against a flat surface like a floor, I could easily snap off this piece. And now all the pieces have been snapped, it's a case of turning them into components. And that's going to follow the exact same process. Step number 3, marking and scoring. So again, referencing the edge, we make multiple marks and connect them with the knife. Snapping and then cutting them free in step 4. So after a whole load of snapping, what we've been left with is a load of offcuts, but also lots of components. So what we've got is 8 front shelf supports, and these are paper wrapped on one edge. 4 back shelf supports, plaster on all 4 edges. 8 blocks, or what we're calling shelf support pieces. 4 shelves, and then also this one big piece which is going to make up the back and sides. And this is the piece we're going to be working on next. So for step 5, we're going to do 2 things. Firstly, we're going to score 2 lines that are the length of the board. And as you can see, I've flipped my piece, and that's because whatever side you score this line on is going to be the final colour of the outside of the shelf. And the second thing we're going to do is cut a series of notches on both sides of the piece. And there's 2 important things to note here. The first is that you have to mark both sides of the board before you remove any pieces. And then the second thing is that rather than snapping these pieces out, we're going to cut them. Gradually pressing harder and harder from each side until the piece should just pop out. And whilst we've got the board in this position, for step 6 we're going to glue on the back shelf supports. However, if I was just to glue them on like so, this uneven plaster surface would mean that the shelves don't fit flat, and so we need to remove it. And there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either use your knife and scrape along the edge, or we can rub it against a flat surface that we don't mind getting plaster on. And then once that's done, I can glue it in place using the notches I cut earlier as a reference for where to place it. And whilst they're all drying, for step number 7, we can snap the 2 sides. So that this piece will now make up both the back and the sides. So that's everything for the time being with this big back piece. And so now we need to return to the other components. And like the back shelf supports, in step 8, they're also going to need to have their edges cleaned up before gluing. And the two front cross braces can be glued together with one of these small support blocks at each end. And once the glue's dried, you could assemble everything as is, but if you want to make the paper a bit more durable and the edges sealed, in step number 9 I'm going to apply a finish. And you can use a wax here, but I've decided to use a brush on polyurethane varnish. And once the varnish is dried, you are actually finally finished. Step number 10 is the final assembly. So the front shelf support can go in first, and then you can add the shelves. And as you can see, it's surprisingly strong and rigid.